I'm sorry? To the computer. To the computer. Hi, everybody. My name is Danielle Manalanson. I'm the Executive Director of Side by Side. We're the organization that brings Great Start to you. Now, some of you may remember in the past, we came out to your school and did this. Thanks to COVID. We had to pivot a little bit and redesign. So we were given the opportunity to host these parent engagement sessions here at the Fellowship Hall of First United Methodist Church. And I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. All of our sessions for the rest of the year will be right here. Similar setup, dinner, time to talk with an actual educational professional while we take care of your children. So you can enjoy that hour while they're playing. But they will come back to you at the end of the night. I do want to take one very quick second and introduce to you Pastor Stan Cardwell. He is the pastor here at First United Methodist Church. He just wants to give a quick little hello and thank you for coming.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Oh, that's loud. I am so blessed to welcome you here tonight. It was about my first month in, and I met this lady right here, and we had lunch together, and she says, hey, we'd like to keep this program going. What about using your church? And my first thought was, yes, let's make it happen. So we are so glad you're here. And if I knew Spanish, I would share a little bit, but I don't. My daughter does. I'm going to try to get her back from Guatemala so she can talk to you all too as well. But I'm just so thankful you're here and so blessed. And, my house is your house, right? This is God's house, so we all belong here. So welcome. Thank you.
And now I want to introduce you to Mrs. Renee Court Wallace. I got to write that down. She is a guidance counselor at Scotchtown Hills Elementary School, for those of you that may recognize her. And she's an all-around wonderful person. So enjoy your time.
Hello, good evening. I wanted to give you a little bio, because what is the guidance counselor doing up here? So I wanted to make reference to the fact that I was born and raised in New York. I'm first generation Guyanese. Both of my parents immigrated here from Guyana, which is in South America. I graduated Lincoln University with a degree in early childhood and elementary ed with a minor in art in 1992. I'm talking my age now. I started in Prince George's County in May. I got hired right out of college. And I started at Calverton Elementary as a first grade teacher. And I was there for 10 years. And then in that time, I finished my master's at my time, it was called Guidance and Counseling. My intern, Miss Washington, is getting a degree in school counseling. So see how even my degree has changed. There, I opened Cora Rice Elementary School, which is down the Beltway in Landover, right by the stadiums. So we were open for military housing at the time. And when I left Cora Rice, I came to Scotchtown Hills Elementary School. In 2012, and then in 2013, I became a widow with two young girls at the time, which were 2 and 3. And I am still at Scotchtown Elementary School, getting ready to celebrate my 30th year. And I'm not ready yet to retire, mainly because every year is a new and rewarding year where I learned so many things. If anyone would have told me that we would be teaching online for a whole year, I would have told them they were crazy, especially when I graduated in. If anyone would have told me that we would be teaching online for a whole year, I would have told them they were crazy, especially when I graduated in. If anyone would have told me that we would be teaching online. I'm repeating a lot. I don't know who it is. Okay. So in in 2015, I became part of the board here at Side by Side, and have been on the board since that time, in which I have done some of these presentations prior, and also represent in other committees for Side by Side. But the attraction to Side by Side for me is that it was giving back to the community. And ironically, when I started in '92 and moved to Maryland, I lived in Laurel. And then after I got married, moved to Columbia, and when I became a widow, I came back to Laurel, because I guess it was home. It was someplace that gave me comfort. And as Miss Mountain has made reference to, I have remarried, and so that's why she called me Wallace. For the kids and everyone else, my email is always my first name, Renee, Renee, my maiden name, which is Cort, Cort. And so as I walk around Laurel, I continue to see my students, my families, and a place that I call home. So I'm so glad to give to you today some insight into Side by Side and Reading Night and how you can support your children at home. So I hope you appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Ms. Washington, ready? All right. Okay. So some of the topics we're talking tonight is why we love to read. And the first question about what is your favorite book? It's funny, I don't remember my favorite book. I just remember my little brother's favorite book. He liked Digger the dog, and he dug through this, and all through the pages he's digging. And when he had his first son, I bought him Digger the dog, because I said, your father loved Digger the dog. But what memories do you have, or anybody, about a favorite book that you might have had? Nobody has a favorite?
Wishbone.
Fish?
Wishbone.
Wishbone. You said, but you were still chewing.
I'm sorry, it was my dog named Keisha, because my name is Keisha.
Oh, okay, my dog, okay, all right. So, yeah, so there's always a favorite book or even a favorite time. And for both my brother and I think we struggled with reading. And if it's something that you don't like, you kind of avoid it. But my mother had this way of always having reading time before we went to bed. And so I do remember that. And I remember bringing things to her and how she opened up a whole new world to me as far as what reading was. You know, that you could have these images in your head and it wasn't just hard work. So it's not so much I remember a book, but I do remember a time or situation. Is there any fun aspect that you, in your childhood, could remember about reading? That you remember?
Under the sheet of the flashlight.
Okay, so you were hiding to read. You were
Because I was
sneaking.
supposed to be asleep.
You were sneaking to read. I was just teasing the other day because a lot of times we can send kids to the office with a message and it's like telephone, it never comes the way that you send it, right? So as a first grade teacher, when I first started, I realized if I make them write the message, they'll remember what to say. And so they would tease me in the office all the time. Here comes one of Miss Court's kids with a handwritten note. But they would sit there and, read out what they had to say, and they weren't nervous. So I think that was another way that I was teaching them reading and writing, and that it would help them, with what it is that they have to do within the future. All right, so it says, we talked about one of your favorite childhood books. What about your children? Is there a book that you want to hide because they like to read that one all the time, or want you to read that to them? The Cat in the Hat? Okay. Cat in the Hat for you too. It's somehow it doesn't change, right? After all these years, Dr. Seuss is still a favorite. Yeah. Green Eggs and Ham. Yeah. And the funny thing is, from an educational point of view, those are not good books to read because they're all over the place. And that's not how we read, right? And so it's funny, what we might like and the rhyming of it is not always the best way to teach. right? And so when you're teaching reading, you want to have it so that the students are learning how to really read across a page. But I'm not telling you to throw out all the Dr. Seuss books. But just an idea to stick in your head. Go ahead. Okay, so our objectives. The importance of reading, the parent's role, language and literacy in pre-K, assessments. I highlighted that because it seems like such a big word and I get so nervous when I hear it. How do I figure out where your kid is and how I can help them is an assessment. So a lot of times we think, oh, some kind of standardized test. Assessments don't have to be as dreaded for you or even your students as you might think. And so hopefully today we'll kind of get into that and know how to gear what we're doing for our kids and how we can help them. All right, so how to be the teacher at home, what is reading for skill and fluency, and the activities that we could do. I know that you got a folder with some examples, so I'll review those as well. When I saw the be the teacher, my two daughters accused me all the time, Mommy, this is not school. So I got penalized because I was already an educator, so they didn't want me to teach them anything. So, and now that they're in middle school, my threat is you don't want me to call your teacher. Mommy, I'll take care of it. I'll email her. So it's like sometimes being an educator can be a good thing, and then they don't like you being good. Reading. Why is it important? So I remember my dad telling me a story of him saying to his cousin, I love the way when we were growing up, your mom always read the highlights from the newspaper. He's like, I used to think that was so cool. And his cousin chuckled and said, yeah, that's because my dad couldn't read. And so my father had no idea. He was just so impressed that this was this family gathering, and during dinner, she always read the highlights, not knowing that it was because dad couldn't read. And even as an educator, as a counselor, I have seen times when I might ask someone to fill out a paper or to do a questionnaire. It's so easy to shove a paper at someone. And sometimes the issue of why they might give me pushback is because they cannot read the paper. So it takes you to be more inquisitive to know how important reading is and how it can help support you for your whole life. And so, like I said, I'm appreciative to my mother that although I might have had issues reading when I first started to read, that she pushed me to see how it was fun, right? And how it was going to help me to grow. And I hope that that's something that we can do here as well. Parents are the first teachers. You are the most important role model in your child's education. And you see it now. Like, you see how babies take the remote control and pretend they're talking on the cell phone, right? Because they watch everything we do, right? And so that was another important thing. I think if my mother wasn't opening up a book, maybe I wouldn't want it to do it, right? And sometimes you say, well, you have to read this because, the teacher says you have to read it at this time. I also give praise to my dad because, are we there yet? Are we there yet? He used to say, I don't know, read the signs. Are we going? Where are we going? And I still think that helps me to this day. I'm very observant if I'm going north or I'm going south. I'm not good with right and left, but I sure know what the street sign, said. So it doesn't have to be always a book, I had one parent tell me, my kid needs to be moved up because every time we go to Walmart or Target, he can read the sign. I say, yes, and he can read Shell and Mobile. There's certain things they're going to know how to read just because you go there all the time. What's important too is that you say, we're going to the Mobile, or mommy's favorite grocery store is Giant, right? So the more that you're using those words, showing those words, the more that they can identify them. Communication. I think we take for granted how much that we speak to our kids and what we speak to them about. The connection that I gave you the example of students going to the main office with the note that they prepared, that connection between what they say and what they write down and that they can say it again is awesome. Like when that light bulb comes on. Also as teachers, and probably you as well, you might write a note or your grocery list and all of a sudden they say, oh, we need eggs. Like all of a sudden the light bulb goes off and they know how to read some of the words that you're writing. I think that's the best time when you say to yourself, this is now, you need to make the list. You know, you need to, and even now, because we do Uber Eats or we order from the grocery store, they can click on the different things that they know. You know, so these is ways of using reading without sitting in front of a book and saying, we're going to read now for 15 minutes. Phonemic awareness. I think so many times we say, oh, my kids can sing the alphabet forwards, backwards. But then when you ask them, what letter is that? You know, or what letter is ooh, they don't know. So one of the things that we forget is that we teach the letters as far as the pictures of them in isolation and not with their sounds. Sounds are so important because it's the sounds of those letters that make the words the way that we speak. You know? Rhyming words, which is what Dr. Seuss was so... That's why we like him so much. So important. So we talked about the sounds, the syllables. I'm old school, so we always used to clap out how many syllables are in the word. And what does it begin and end with? So even though you know that cat and bat and rat all rhyme, are you identifying that the reason that they rhyme is because they all have at? You know, like sometimes they hear it, but they don't know where it is, right? So these are things that even when our students are in school, the teacher is doing while reading. So then when I, as a guidance counselor, go in and I just want to read about how Sally is happy, they'll say, oh, those last two words rhyme. Because the modeling has already started. So it doesn't always have to be a story that they're able to read the whole thing of, even if you pause at the at and the and the on, because those are the words that they can ID. So there's so many ways that we can use different tricks to make reading more fun and make it part of our everyday. Right? So we're talking about the way that we're speaking. We're talking about the way that we use reading and writing as far as making our lists, right? Organization of what things happen. They can tell you all about a cartoon and when Bugs Bunny went in the hole and when he came out. That's order. And a story is still a story, when it was on TV or when they're reading. So if you're practicing that order, that's going to help them even when they're reading, to try to remember what order the story came in. So we're going to look at vocabulary, the meaning and the relationship and how it is used in life. So after, you use the word quarantine. They never heard quarantine before. Now it's an everyday thing. Right? So the words that you are learning, they're learning, and you're learning all the time. It's how many times are we going to repeat it? The more that we repeat it, the more it becomes part of our regular vocabulary. Story comprehension. So many times the teacher will call and say, Johnny reads, but he does not comprehend. That's another one of those big words. What does that mean? Comprehend. I know he read the story to me 3 times, no problem. I don't know why you're saying he can't read. But when you ask Johnny, what did Little Red Riding Hood have on? And he says he doesn't know. It's because he doesn't understand what he's reading. He can read it, but he doesn't understand that Little Red Riding Hood was wearing something red. So one of the keys I always try to tell parents is, yes, you can stop in the story to ask the question. The best question words for comprehension are why and how. Why did Little Red Riding Hood go to Grandma's house? How did the wolf trick her? A lot of times we'll say, who was in the bed? The wolf. or we'll ask, what was she, what did she have in her basket? Those are things that they normally will think about. The why and the how are those higher thinking. So when you want to push comprehension, that's what you need to ask. When they're watching their TV shows, right? Because they're going to watch Disney. I still am going to ask, why does the girl keep going to that house? Even though I've seen it, right? And then, Mommy, you don't know? It's because the magic princess lives there, right? So it's always asking those questions of why and how. We also talk about invented spelling and inventive sentences. Yes, we want students to learn their capitals, and there's a period at the end of a sentence, but we don't want to stifle their imagination and way of expressing. So in pre-K and kindergarten, we are definitely all about writing whatever you want on the page. One of my secrets when I was in first grade and they would draw me a picture, I'd say, don't bring a picture to me if you don't have a letter next to it. Why? Because I never know what they were drawing. So if, they put a G next to it, I'm like, oh, that's a girl. It's a nice giraffe. Like I would try, it helped me, right? But it also is helping them with their sound. So many times they show you a picture and you're like, what is that? So if it is that they were able to give you some sounds or some from it, you can kind of figure out what it is they're trying to draw or express. Resources. It talks about going to the public library. I'm not gonna lie, I have PG, Howard County, and Anne Arundel. Right? But now, that's how old I am. Now, your cards are good all over Maryland, but So definitely getting access to the library or more than one library, awesome idea. You will spend a lot of money buying books that they read one or two times and then not read again, or series, as they get older. So the library is an awesome place to find other things to read. And the librarian is an awesome resource, right? When there's an idea or an interest that your child is in, that they can give them more books to go with that interest. The Maryland Book Bank. This is a place where you can go to donate and to pick up free books, right? So that's also another good resource. Your child's school. We have so many books at school. Teachers are always helping to give students books. I remember when I bumped into someone 10 years later, she said, I remember when you gave me that book and you wrote inside. I don't remember. But then she was impressed with the fact that I gave her a book, right? Books are an excellent way to communicate and know that it's not only about toys, but that books are something that you're able to share. And there's other times, I'm a thrifty, so I'm in the thrift store and I'll open something and it says, to Sally and your third birthday. And I'm like, oh, I wonder where Sally is. What is that teacher talking about? Now what? And it says blah, 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 blah. Many times the students are so focused, especially now after a year of being, for a lot of students, online. The whole idea of being in this building with a lot of people or kids in their class, it's like so mesmerizing, So it's a lot to get students back to focusing that this is real school. And even when they see us, they're like, oh, that's what you really look like. and myself too, sometimes I'm like, I thought you were taller. Online you look taller. So it does take the kids to get back into the scheme of things. And definitely this first month, that's all we've been doing. This is how we walk in a line. This is how we sit 6 feet apart from our friends. So it's all about routines. So I can understand why they might not totally be focused on what the teacher is saying. Kindergarten language and literacy assessment. So I told you about the how and why. So when it is that a teacher assesses a student in pre-K and kindergarten, there is no written test. They give the student a book and they start to ask them questions. So I'm giving you a cheat sheet to some of the questions that they're going to ask, right? When they give the student the book. One of the things they do is they just hand them the book. And they wait to see, is the student going to turn it right side up so they can read it? I've seen kids read it backwards. I see kids start at the back, but that's all with modeling. So the more that you model and show them the front of the book, the back of the book, the more they will be able to know when they're handed a book how to hold it. We talked about retelling. First, next, then last. So many times they remember the end, or they start in the middle, and I have to say, is that how it started? Where did it end? What happened at the end of it? Rhyming words. Even when you stop in a story, the teacher says, oh, what's that word that you've gotten to? And they say, oh, it's can. Do you know another word that rhymes with that? A lot of times, if you ask them without the book, they would say man. But now that they're so focused on the story, they don't want to stop to give you another rhyming word, right? Asking the syllables of the word and what sound does that word stop at. So as a student is reading, the teacher might say, can you stop here? What is that word? That word is big. What does it start with? It starts with a B. Okay, reading some more. What word is that? Cat. What does it end with? And they might still say C, because they're so used to someone asking them what the word begins with. So they definitely ask them what it begins with and what it ends with. Because you'll have a student who will read every C word is can, because that's the first C word they learned, you know what I mean? And there's no can on the page. So that's another reason why we want to show the students the whole word, not just the beginning. So they're not frozen at the beginning of the word. We ask about uppercase and lowercase letters. I have parents who say, oh, my kids know all their alphabet. And then you show them the lowercase. I didn't know you were going to show them too. Yes. Well, we always say 56. I know that's more. Why? Because you have the printed G that has a little curl to it sometimes, and the A that sometimes has a different character to it depending on the font. So we try to teach them those as well, so they'll know them, just so they know to identify them. Don't be horrified, it's okay. All right, communication verbally. So being able to tell you something about the story. And sometimes they want to tell me the whole story. I just want to know one part. I want to know one person in the story. I know, because it's me, I'm the oldest one in here. When I was taught to read, you weren't allowed to look at the picture. You could only read the words. We've gone better from that now. So yes, students are allowed to look at the picture. So even though they're reading Sam and Sam and Sam, they can look at the picture and see Sam is really short for Samantha because Sam is a girl. Before they would never let us do that. Now they will, right? So they will ask the student, do you want to look at the pictures first? We're going to read the story today. What do you think the story is about? Can you open the book? Where is the title? Who are the authors? When a teacher is reading to students, we try to always tell them who's the author, who's the illustrator. Just like they're into Dr. Seuss and they know all the Dr. Seuss books, when we're doing series, we can show more than one author that writes a book. Now with YouTube, I love YouTube, you can even see authors reading, right? You can see other teachers reading, which makes it even more dynamic, right? Because they're able to see that visual. As far as the emergent writing, being able to write there, express themselves. That's why I love the whole list thing, right? If they're going to write the list for you to go to the store. My age again, I remember writing my Christmas list from Sears. Sears don't even exist anymore. where you could go through the magazine and pick, what you want. Lists are so important. Even when we talk about getting dressed in the morning, right? I can make my list of how I get dressed in the morning. And then I would get frustrated that my daughter was not following my list. And then finally, I had this Oprah aha moment where I said, what I really need to do is to find out how you get dressed and make the list from them, right? Because everyone's brain works differently. So once I was able to figure that out, it made it a little better. Go ahead. Okay, so we talked a little about pre-K assessments and kindergarten assessments, that it's not just about a piece of paper and them filling it out. Much more about how they hold a book, what they can identify in a book, and the way that they do reading. Does that give you a little, there's no big test that they're gonna take? And then half of it, I've already given you the answers to. These are things that you can model at home. Right? So when you hear about your child's emerging in reading, these are things, how they're handling the book and the way that they're reading the book, even if they can't read all the words in it. So I hope this is making you feel better. Good. All right. So when I looked at this chart, I was a little confused, and then I put there mastery to beginners. So to me, it makes sense to start at the bottom with all students, including students with disabilities and English learners. Everyone starts their development in levels A and D, where they're just identifying one or two words on a page. When we're buying books at Walmart and Target, we look at the pictures on the outside. They have become so good about labeling. You see, they say grade 1 or grade 2, but you also can learn the secrets of the trade as well. Look at how many words are on the page, right? Because if there are too many words on the page, or if the print is really small, that's gonna dissuade them from wanting to read. So as a pre-K and a kindergartner, you're looking for the books that have less words on a page, but in a whole sentence, and also that they're smaller books, right? We don't want to give them a huge chapter book that they're like, oh, I'm never going to finish this, right? You want them to have the feeling of accomplishment on what they read. And so it's okay to say, this book I'm going to read with you, and this book you're going to read, right? And they should be able to have both. All right, so then we're talking about our 3-year-olds, our pre-K are progressing into kindergarten. Your entry into kindergarten is level 4, and then level 5 is the end of kindergarten. This is just rating what books they're able to read by a certain part. Doesn't mean that we stop, right? And doesn't mean, I don't know what it is, something about when they come back from Christmas break that a light bulb comes on, right? So a lot of times I see students who might be the level 1 and come back from Christmas break and they're on a 4, because it just automatically, everything kind of gelled together. So there's no reason to get concerned, oh my gosh, it's almost June and they're not on a 5. You have all summer, right? And we also talk about summer lag, that sometimes if we're not engaging our students, that they might forget some things. Okay, so we talked about looking at the book, letter identification, and talked about the special A and G as well. Sight words. There is a set of sight words that is like, if you want to read a book in English, certain words you just got to know. I don't know how you sound out the is the. You know what I mean? So certain words is nothing that you could do about it, you just have to know them. And the is in everything, you can't avoid the, right? So certain words that if you're going to learn how to read, you just have to memorize, right? And know that you know them. Using them in sentences, remembering your capital and periods. The BOA, I saw that and I was like, I was trying to figure out what that was. And then I was like, oh, before, right? Below grade level, on grade level, and above grade level. So, how would the teacher decide? Depending on the levels that I showed before, how well they're reading. And just because a student starts below grade level does not mean by the end of the time, they won't be above grade level. At the same thing, you can have a student who starts above grade level because they know all their letters. And then in the middle of the year, they're below grade level because they don't know any words, right? So yes, I'm so grateful that mom or grandma taught you your alphabet, but there was no connection between the alphabet, just these signs that you see, and reading. Okay, good. Kindergarten DRA. So these are the little books that we give our students to read, and then we look to see how they're reading it. So as a teacher is listening, she's also grading. I'm old school, so I used to write down every single word the child said. Now they have like a whole print of the whole book. I'm so mad, because I spent all these years writing every word. So as the student is reading, the teacher is checking off every word that is said. So when they read cat instead of can, she'll write cat next to it or cross it out. When they skip 2 words because they look too long, she's going to put a circle around them to show that they were skipped, right? So after Mary Jo has finished reading the whole book, the teacher now can go back and look and see what it is that Mary Jo did with that story. Did she read all the words? Did she skip them? Did she make up her own story altogether, right? How many words was she really IDing and putting her finger on? So that's how the teachers come up with the DRA score. And even though Mary Jo read the whole book, when asked, well, Mary Jo, who was the character? Oh, it was a horse, and it was about a little boy. You know what I mean? So, because there was a play horse in the back of the playroom in the picture, right? So Mary Jo really didn't understand what she was reading. So although, and we'll say, fluency, Mary Jo was wonderful. She read every single page, had no mistakes. But then when we asked her about the story, she was unable to explain what it is. So that would make Mary Jo not be on a D or a E. And we have students like that as well, who can read really well, but nobody ever stopped to ask them what they were reading. And so when the teacher does, they're like, I finished it, and it sounded good. Okay. First and second grade, we're talking now about dictation. Dictation is when something is said and the student has to write it down. That would be good with your list. Or with birthday cards. I don't do any cards anymore. I just tell them, I need a Valentine's Day card for your Uncle Joe. Make sure you know how to spell it. Why? So that they will get used to practicing. One is good for empathy, that they're teaching them how to communicate with others. But at the same time, it's also having them practice certain words. Now mine are in middle school. It's a little more difficult to make them write a whole card because they can read. But of course, like just this morning, I said I need make sure you have a feel better card. Sick, someone's sick, right? And she said, well, I can't find one for that, but I did find a thank you. And that uncle, he always sends us money. So I'm gonna put thank you and I hope you feel better. I said, okay. But she had to read through, she didn't realize, I know, at least 20 cards to find one that she felt that was the most appropriate. So there's little things that you can do, with them just to show them that they're reading and writing even when it's not in the book. So we talked about the DRA, when the student is reading and the teacher is checking every word. We talked about dictation, and we talked about higher level of comprehension. And the 2 key words, why and how. If you can remember those 2, you're awesome. Because every time you can ask them the why or how questions about what you're reading to them or what they're reading, right? And even if it's not in a piece of literature, even if it's a story that's on the television, right, that they're able to make that connection. And what about when you show them things, right, that was in a book? I took them to the play of Annie. And they said, Mommy, this was nice, but this is not the real Annie, because we saw the movie like 3 weeks ago. And I know the real Annie looked the way it did in the play, and that it was a cartoon. They don't know about the cartoon. So the way that they can make connections to what they already know, right? And then we make that connection back to asking how or why, or what happened in the beginning, or what happened in the end. So we're talking about turning off the TV, turning off the video games. I gave you several examples of when they are watching that TV that you are also present or cognizant of what is being shown. Because it's reality. It's like how we said, oh, I don't let my kid touch the computer. And then we were on the computer for a whole year. So it's not that you should restrict a child totally from something. That should not be their only teacher. Blue's Clues is awesome. But you can also do Blue's Clues. Your interaction also counts, right? So it's important. I don't say that you should totally not have TV or not have video games, but at least communicate. What is that? Why is it that you always have to get the green diamond? Well, if you get the green diamond in this video game, you get 300 points. So the more that I would listen to what was going on in the games, I could understand, right? And then I could put it to real life. Just like when you don't get the right color diamond and it takes money away from you. When I don't get a coupon for shoppers, I have to pay more money for that. See, so you can start to make comparisons to real life. Fluency and comprehension, talking about the book. Stopping in certain words we talked about, listening to the sounds of the words, and then identifying some words that really, you just have to know this is the way it is. And then I sometimes make the reference that word is really French. That word is really from Greek. That's why it's written that way. PH being F. How do you explain those rules? That's just how it is. So sometimes you have these rules that you have to be able to explain. What to talk about? I gave you hints, right? Front and back of the book. Author and illustrator. And then sometimes they're the same ones. Or sometimes they're married, right? Or they're siblings. Where to start to read? From the beginning of the book, not opening in the middle of the book. The direction that their finger is going in. Is the story fiction, nonfiction? Is it reality? What is the illustration? Is it photography? Are they photographs, right? So looking to see those things as well. What does this book remind you of? Is there a character in the book that reminds you of your little sister? Okay, or something that your mom says? So I'm so excited about the way that literature has evolved over the years. I don't remember as many times of having literature to read in school that had characters that looked like me. And now it's an everyday thing, So that's so important to have that connection. That might be another reason why you like a certain book, right? Because you can relate it to your own life. Remembering the order of the book, when they're retelling the story, their favorite character, their favorite author. Having communication about what your students, your children are reading, having that conversation about what they like and not what they don't like can help you to make reading more fun and a part of your family life. Reading activities. So we talked about touching the words. We talked about sight words. I know in your flyer there was something in your folder about making Play-Doh to make shapes of words. We also did a cookie sheet with shaving cream. You can use whipped cream. But when you put the whipped cream, because it's edible, right? So when you put the whipped cream, then they can put their finger and make those letters, right? So, because even though you say don't eat this, they put it in their mouth anyway. So thinking of other things that are edible that you can do can help. So whipped cream is one that's fun, right? I've even painted with chocolate before, like chocolate syrup, and let them draw it like that too. I like sweets, you see that, right? Sensory, as far as touching, you can even use a piece of furry, like a furry pillow and do the words so they can feel the way the shape is, right? Or on the carpet to draw the words, because every student is different. Some kids are into what they hear, some kids are into what they touch, right? And they're all in your house together. You have 4 kids and they're gonna learn different ways. So getting different things that you can do for sensory works. I haven't seen it as much, but they were into the slime. I hated the slime. But if you put the slime in a Ziploc, they can still write the words on it, right? So although slime was not my favorite thing, I wanted that phase to go away. Though something else will come, but that is something that they can use, as well. Alphabet flashcards and sight words, even when going through they're going through the guide, right? In cable, they know what channel their favorite show is on, and they know what it starts with, and there are numbers to know that you may miss 10 minutes of the first show. Look at where the arrow is, right? It's not at the beginning. So all of those. So instead of you finding the things on the guide, right? Them pushing in 52, right? Or finding that day, because you look at the top, it says Monday starts with an M. You want the W for Wednesday. Okay, we don't expect them to know all their words tomorrow, but at least this way we keep pushing them to do things on their own. And you see it too, because when you're doing, wait a minute, my show is over there. They're already IDing certain words, right? So this is a reason why, I'll say, oh, I need to find such and such a show. Can you find it for me? And they're able to find, well, mommy, I know you're on that boring station. It's 23, so they can go to 23, right? So there's so many things that we do in our own homes as regular day life that is able to help to increase the reading experiences for our children. And that's why we had this presentation today, just to look at some things that we're automatically doing that you can do at home that's easy and that give you less work. Right? Because it's something that they themselves can do. So we talked about flashword cards, sight words not just being just on the Post-its. Those are wonderful, but you can find them in different places as well, right? In old magazines, in old books that they can ID. All right, so I can put the mic down. Questions, what has worked for you as far as being able to see your kids do more reading at home? What is something that you have done? I told you mine are in middle school. What is something that you're doing now to help with reading?
They get to pick their book.
They get to pick their own book?
Yeah, unlike me just picking it up at the store, like
Uh-huh.
I take the book sections, you see what you want.
Right, and then, like I said, when you get to take the peek, you're like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna love reading this one with you, if you don't mind. Because, the counselor side of me is like, even though they want to read A Secret Garden, that's a chapter book, you already know that that's not their level, And then sometimes they say, oh, you can't read that book. Instead say, can I read this one with you? So I think that's awesome that you're allowing them to get a chance to have choices. Because at school, we give them a lot of choices that they don't get at home, just to allow them to use their comprehension to think about what's best for them. Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, having them do repeat reading one book again and again, so that way they can memorize the words,
Mm-hmm.
or, know what those words are saying.
Mm-hmm.
And when they read another book, they will be able to apply whatever memory they have.
So, okay, and then sometimes I say, okay, you do the cold read, right? And then when they do the cold read, they call Brenda, Barbara, the whole book, right? And then you say, you know what, this was really good. This was really about Barbara. And maybe when I start the book with them, I say, this is a book about Barbara, so that they'll know that, right? And then so when you have them reading the book again, you're not going to be thinking about Barbara this time. Maybe it's going to be some of the other words that they might not have known before. I used to get in trouble with my kids all the time when I'd say, oh, stop right there. What is that word? Mommy, can I just finish the book? And so I realized, like I said, they said, why are you bringing the teacher home? I was interrupting. So I'm not saying that you can't read the book more than one time, but each time you do it, it's for another purpose, right? So, okay, yes, I know you like this book, but tell me this. Can you find me, while you're reading, 5 words, that you know from your list? So each time, they're going for a different purpose, right? Or when you read this book, because this is the 5th time you're reading it, tell me which part you like the best, or even go to that part. You don't have to read the whole book, just find the part that you like the best. You said it's when the character gets on the horse. Find that page. And sometimes the page that has the horse is not the page that says the boy got on the horse. And then they get mad, they're like, wait a minute, it's not here. So you gotta read the page before or maybe the page after, right? So there's nothing wrong with rereading a book, just make sure each time it gets another purpose. So it doesn't get boring. Good? Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
So, one of the advantages of having multiple kids,
Mm-hmm.
is that, my 10-year-old boy, so I have him read to his sister now, so she's 5, he's 10. So
Mm-hmm.
now I'm getting both of them to read and,
And then you don't have to do it.
but I can see, and then, also, I do a lot of read aloud because I am a children's author as well. So they hear me, doing read aloud. So then they would, I would usually tell them, okay, tell me 5 things that you liked about it. And so they would write, my son, my older, he would write it down. And then my daughter, she would actually draw something of what I read.
Yeah. And then when they make that connection, like when you go to the store, oh, that says croissant. Remember that was in the story? I want to try them, so making that connection to what they see and what they read. It's a big aha moment when it comes together, and that they get it. So yes, and for me, my oldest is very good at school, but she's not a good teacher. Not every child understands why you don't get it. You know what I mean? So I have to, although I let her do stuff, I have to listen because I don't want her to start to be mean. You know what I mean? Because the other one doesn't get it. So that makes me feel awesome that, that your 10-year-old has patience with the 5-year-old. Mine are only 18 months apart. And sometimes she's like, you don't understand that? Or just give it to me. And I noticed the younger one is like, no, I don't get it. Because she knows that the older one will just do the whole paper. You know what I mean? 'Cause she has the whole paper. So I have to, so you always have to listen because you never know. Yes. Okay. So yeah. So older siblings helping younger siblings, and sometimes it can be the reverse. And definitely rereading stuff and making it okay to reread stuff. Just like when they watch the same Disney movie over and over again. So if they can do that, they can read the book more than once. Anybody else? Anything else that you can think of that's helped you?
Always like letting them look at the pictures before the beginning of the book, the cover, just looking, what do you think this story's gonna be about? Letting her use her imagination to kind of plan ahead what the story's gonna be about. And as she reads the story, she starts to talk about what happened in the beginning, and she's, oh, that's probably why that picture, that's why she's wearing that or something.
Thinking ahead, making predictions.
Exactly.
And it's the same thing we do when we want to watch something on cable. I look at the picture and it has an actress that I really like, and I didn't even bother to read the subtitles. And then halfway through it, I realized it was a horror movie. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch this. So it's the same thing. Sometimes you have to go through the cover, right, and go through the pictures and see what it is about. And is it something that I really want to spend my time to communicate with? So yes. That's what, and then you see how I'm trying to make the connection too, when they're looking at a book and even when they're doing even games, right? Because sometimes they download a game because they think it's gonna be really cool and they're like, "Mommy, that was a horrible game," right? So it's the same thing. So looking at the description or even saying, is there a description? Do you want me to read it with you? See if it's something that you really like, right? Yeah. So there's so much reading that goes on in when we're driving, right? When we're using our technology, when we're doing our daily activities, our daily chores, and that we're able to use that and incorporate that into our daily lives to increase our students' reading. My age again, my eyesight is going. And I'm like, girl, read the directions on this for me, please. So, so you know, there are ways that you can ask them to interact with you about, especially like cakes and stuff like that. They have step by step now. And I'm like, I can't read that. Just tell me what the next line is. Or I really can't see that well. So I make them do it, right? And medicine sometimes, you know. Now I get irritated. Everybody knows Robitussin is for a cough, right? But now that they read, she's like, well, it also says runny nose and the sniffles. And I said, girl, she said, I think I need the NyQuil instead because it has all the symptoms. And then I can't say anything because I made them read, right? But I'm like, and Robitussin's been down longer than NyQuil, but I just leave it alone because I've, you know, taught them to go ahead and read. And medicine is another thing that's very important. I mean, I teach about being drug-free and that you don't take something without communicating with your parent or with an adult. But so many times the boxes look the same, right? And I was at my friend's house, I'll never forget, and she was giving the pump, you know, the asthma pump. And then all of a sudden I looked, I said, girl, you gave the wrong one. She was giving two and ended up giving somebody else. I think he just wanted to see what the pump was going to be like. So it's the same thing, them being more knowledgeable about their own medicines, right? How much to take, what does the directions say? Communicating that is so awesome, right? Their sizes, so many times at school, someone might have an accident or is missing clothes, and I say, well, what size do you wear? What brand does mommy buy, right? I see hairstyles, I say, oh, that's a nice hairstyle. I can't ask them how long did it take, but I can say how many TV shows did you have to watch when your mother made your hair? And then I'll know only one, or it was two, so I know it might have been an hour, right? So busy looking at what we do and how we interact during the day is going to help us to increase our students' love of learning and education, right? But you gave me some good examples of stuff that I didn't even think of. Anything else that you wanted to share with me? What about what's going on in school now? Has anything come home that you're like, what?
Yes.
Okay. The silent one in the back. You see that?
I'm really big over the summer that my 6-year-old now is, we read every night. It could have been any level of book. Read it. So now that she's kind of, I wouldn't say advanced, but she's very knowledgeable in the words. I'm like, why are we tracing letters?
Well, can she?
Why are we coloring the letter R? Like, you know all of this. So she's in first grade.
Okay.
And I'm like, where is the advancement? I feel like there's nothing.
Challenge?
Thank you. That's the word. Yes. There's nothing challenging her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, all this stuff that your sister is freaking out, she's doing.
Right.
So that's where the confusion is. And I'm trying to like maybe because they're trying to see where each student is because
Right.
they're learning and that okay, let's see where everyone is. Let's measure them, and then maybe we can pick up where we would be heading in that direction.
Yes and yes.
That's what I'm confused about.
Yes and yes. What school?
Deerfield.
Okay, so it's not my school.
Okay.
I just want to make sure. So yes, so the cutoff for DRA is October, right? Because you got 20 in a class or less or more, right? And so if you're going to individually ask, read this book to me while the others are in the room, it takes a minute. So I would be curious to know if her DRA was done yet, okay? And does the teacher have a level where she is, okay? And then, so the counseling hat is, what is the plan, right? Sometimes that means that there might be a switch of groups of kids, okay? Sometimes means that we might go through something else, okay? Maybe more kids will come in with her or she will go out with them just for that time, okay? When you go to conference, because conferences are coming, another example would be to take some of the things that you have done, okay? So for mine, when I switched her from private to public, I went in at conference and said, this is what she was doing in private. And like you, I said, I don't want you to call me and tell me that she's a discipline problem. I just want to show you what she's able to do, and then however you wanna deal with that in your room, let me know how I can support you. Because you don't wanna everybody thinks their kid is brilliant, right? So erase that. This is the proof I'm showing you. This is what they can do, right? What else is it that I need to do, right? But this is the counselor part of me talking.
Okay.
The educational part, as far as your DRAs are done by the end of October. So teachers still have some more leeway where they're looking to see exactly where your student is. All right? But when you say about writing and stuff, that's why I asked. But you did a lot of reading. Were you writing with her?
We did workbooks, reading.
So she did, so
She
her,
did everything. She did make
Okay.
sentences, like you said, the listing. I'm hearing the things it's like, oh my goodness, my 6-year-old.
so when she gets that, and then when you go to conference, say, have you finished yet? Because I'm a little concerned. Please call me back in when you are finished,
Okay.
so that we can talk about what else, and put it on yourself, what else I can do,
Okay.
right? And has she been a discipline problem yet? Okay, so she's not complaining yet. So even though Elder put the B word, bored, in there, right? You can also put that as a concern, So say, what is it that you want me to do at home?
Okay.
But you're also listening to hear what the teacher is doing in school, right?
Okay.
So yes, that's definitely, and that helps with conferences, right? I like to, that we have this meeting before you go to conference, right? So most of you are going to conference on Monday. Scotchtown, we can go Friday night. We like that because you don't have to take off work. And when you go to conference, you want to know, what is it that the teacher sees? We had this one little boy, he's in 4th now. We, almost like a room like this with the glass, we had to put him in there with his father, and he read the whole book. And the teacher had to look through the glass, because when he was in class, he wouldn't say anything. And so we're like, look, he doesn't read. And the father's like, he reads every night. So sometimes what is happening at home is not always happening at school. So that's why it's important to go ahead and communicate with the teacher at the conference. Where are they at? Like I said, throw it on yourself. Don't let them know you talk to me. And ask, what is it that I can do? Listen for the suggestions, right? Because you want to mimic the same things. Yes.
I find a lot of times, like when my littlest comes home with homework, she'll say she doesn't understand, she doesn't get it, she can't do it. But in school, she brings home papers and they're all perfect with minimal assistance from the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see what's happening.
She wants your
between school and
attention.
home.
I'm the counselor. So the only thing I would say to that is if you want to do 2 pages, like you have the workbook that you do with her at home, you know what I mean? And I'm gonna color this page with you. If you do this one for your teacher, I'll do this one with you. See what I'm saying? And then you have the reverse. Some kids who want to rush through everything and never want you to see them at all, but you put them in the kitchen so while you're cooking, you can still eye over and see that they're messing up on their L's, so that you'll be able to help with it the next time, right? But that's what it sounds like, because she's saying that she doesn't know what to do, and the directions are there. Like, do you get the directions too?
Yep, and sometimes it'll be something that she did in school, but another sheet came home because they want them to practice it. You did it in school, now do it at home. Same sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Mom, I don't get it. I don't know what I'm doing.
So when you see the first one and you ask her, what's this? What does she say? Does she say, I don't know?
Usually I don't know.
Okay, because I'm thinking like if she would brag about the thing that she liked the most, or who
If
she.
it's got a stamp, she'll brag. But if it doesn't have it, like, I got a great job stamp. Okay, well, what was it about? I don't know.
Yeah. Which, as an educator, you go to dinner and they're like, I didn't do anything in school today. Really? I worked so hard. So, I would, and definitely, my dad used to make us tell us one thing before we ate. And my brother would, I'm like, I am hungry, you better think of something. So, or we would like communicate in the back. I'm like, when we go to dinner tonight, you say letters. Because it's curry night. So that too. So sometimes just to think, and I didn't know it. I had, and he's a teacher's kid. He every day after school he goes to his mom's room, and then he runs back, and I'm like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I gotta ask what we did today." So, but he cheats because he goes back to his room, his class, and looks on the wall, and then he comes back to his mom like, oh, we did such and such. So I don't know what happens by the time they leave, like they forget everything. But yeah, so maybe that, I'm always looking to see something that because you go through the book, right? You go in her backpack?
Yep, there's hardly ever anything there though.
Okay, because I know for pre-K, they make the students go in their backpack and take out and put things in it, right? So much we do for them, right? So if you're saying, go in your backpack, show me what you have today. What is in there? What did you put in there? That might help to trigger what happened for the day, right? Or if it's something that she likes, like if you're going to have the extra syrup on your ice cream, you need to tell me, right? So the more that, or mimic for yourself. Oh my gosh, today when I went to the bank, the lady was so nice to me. Her name was Brenda. So if you're saying it, then they'll think of a friend too. The counseling part of my brain, I had a student who left our school. And the mother was like, oh my God, I don't think he's gonna make it. He just misses your school. So I called him up, Zoom, and I said, listen, I'm gonna Zoom with you on Friday, and you better have a name for me. I don't care who it is, but you better know somebody's name. And so when Friday came and I did the Zoom, he's like, oh my gosh, I got 3 names for you. I was like, did you talk to them or you just ask their name? He said, well, the next day I just got their name, but I knew you probably asked me more questions. So every day I get some more information, right? So the more that we ask them things to report to us or model, right? Because maybe it's the fact that they don't know how to model what happened in their day, Or my boss told me to do 3 papers. Did you have 3 papers to do today? Then it might, help with the conversation. Right? Yes, ma'am.
Is it concerning that, like my pre-K, she doesn't bring anything home?
Everyone is.
Did you color? Where's what you color?
They might be keeping it for the portfolio too.
Okay.
Right? And then pre-K, their first report card is not until January. They have a mid-year, right? So they might be looking for some things to hold on to show and to grade, yeah. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't give them something to do, especially when the other one is doing.
Oh, yes, the 4-year-old, she knows certain sight words already.
Right.
So when the 6-year-old is reading, I make her read out loud on purpose, and they'll sit side by side, and she'll go, oh, mommy, that word is no, I know, it's N-O, or it's on, because when Ava read the book, it said that.
You gotta give her her own book though, because Ava's gonna get mad.
Eventually, yeah.
Separate
Ava
them.
was like, well, let me teach you how to read.
Yeah. Or let her color when Ava's, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But yeah, it sounds good that they're able to, to compare with one another. But yeah, when you go for your conference, your communication, I wouldn't even second guess. They're probably going to show you some examples of things that they're doing, and then they probably will start to send in more. It just takes some time. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
To respond to what she was saying, I had that issue with my daughter when she would come home, talk about pre-K and she would say, I don't understand, I don't know. Because she knows when you're home, we help them. So she could be trying to trick on mom's.
Oh, because she doesn't want mom to help her.
Yeah, she wants mom to help. Mom will do the work.
Yeah.
Help her do the work. So then before, usually what I do is, as soon as she comes home, I'll take out her work and stuff, and then I'll go, oh my God, what is this? I don't understand this.
Yeah.
What did the teacher tell you about this? And then she would say, so in that way, she doesn't have a chance to say, I don't understand the word.
Right.
Yeah.
Explain to them, or and I'm like, oh, and you colored this green, mommy, that's blue. You don't know that's blue.
Right.
Like I give wrong answers sometimes, just so that they would know. The other thing, so I don't forget, culturally, is that sometimes when we help, things change, right? So, my example is my mother taught me half past, quarter to, and then when I went to school, it was like, no, you're not supposed to do that. So sometimes what we might teach our students at home might be different from what they're tested on the way they learn at school, which is fine, just to listen and to know. I had one parent who said, she came and she said, look, I see you teaching coins. I'm like, yeah. She said, I want a job at CBS, so I need some to know about coins. I said, okay. And so every day I would send an extra paper home with her, and then she started working at CBS. So, and our coins are crazy anyway, because why is the nickel bigger than the dime? I don't know. So, right? And we're the only country that doesn't have colored money. What's that about? So I totally get it, So that, to make that connection also helps as well, so sometimes the way you might say it or do it might be different than the way that the teacher does it at home. As a first generation, I just learned that I had to turn it off and on. So there were certain words that I used at home that I didn't use at school. And you're saying, and my kids don't speak my language. They're listening all the time. So they might not repeat you, right? But they know what's going on, right? And they can do that. So, and it's important. So I grew up in a time where there weren't as many children from other countries than I was, right? So I thought that it wasn't okay. But now, we're able to celebrate our culture so much more. So to make those similarities and stuff gives you pride, makes you something to feel, happy about. I used to hold my breath when my parents came, like, oh my God, they're gonna find out. Because that was my secret, Nobody would know that my parents had an accent until they came to school. So to make sure that you're having them to explain and show the differences, similarities, is so important. Your cultures are what we learned and how we can help to impress upon our students that reading is important and is part of, that we never get away from it. It's really great. Well, thank you. I've enjoyed and had fun with you. Please come back again.
Thank you so much.
Let me tell you one thing before you leave. And no, don't leave your children. We've already gone over that. On your way out tonight, you'll see 2 QR codes on the wall right next to the door. I'm going to email you an evaluation, just what you thought of tonight. If you don't want to wait for that, you can scan the QR code and do it ahead of time. There's one in English and one in Spanish. They're the same, just a different language. So that's right beside the door as you leave. You just want to have your camera and pop that. Otherwise, just check your email tomorrow, and I'll send the evaluation that way. We can't get better if we don't know. So please just take a moment, let us know so we can keep improving for you. 2 more things while your children are coming. There are some boxes of books, but on the table on your way out, please feel free to take what you want, as much as you want. I don't want to take them back to the room. So the more you take, the less I have to carry. So there's a lot of really good Spanish titles, which aren't always easy to come by when it comes to free books, and lots of English titles as well. Some are new, some are used. Feel free to take what you like. Lastly, on the food service table where you got your dinner tonight, there's some bags that have some leftover pizza. There are some salad in bags that was left over. There are whole pizzas that are left over. Well, those are first come, first served. And then there's some bottles of water. So please feel free to take it with you. We don't want it to go to waste. Let it be lunch tomorrow for your son or your daughter, or for you, or maybe as a snack on the way home. But please feel free to take what you like on the way out, but you have to take your kids too. So I'm gonna check to make sure they're coming up the stairs. My child care workers are gonna double check just to make sure your numbers match up for your safety and for theirs, and then you'll be on your way. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.